Chapter 28, Foreign Radio Wave Propagations. The central fact which has been proved, and which is of great interest and importance, is that the natural phenomena involving gravitation and inertia, such as the motions of the planets, and the phenomena involving electricity and magnetism, including the motion of light, are not independent of one another, but are intimately related, so that both sets of phenomena should be regarded as parts of one vast system, embracing all nature. Henry Norris Russell. When Bill pulled the emergency brake on that funky old GMC Immaculate Heart bus up on the volcanic anvil at the mouth of heaven, he never drove it again. When the Scalds discovered the bus's AM radio could get New Orleans, up there on that wide promontory, they commenced to run the battery down to piano tinklings of Sugar Pie DeSanto, going back where I belong, calling them home from a distant planet, listening to motor-driven sounds, and speaking of hamburgers and milkshakes, in the ever-present sound of surf breathing the life of the original vagina and womb into their ears, a life they immediately spit out in favor of the Temptations. They were trying to remain ignorant of the onslaught of what we all felt, a dark comic mortality peculiar to the black-brown ancient rock itself, an igneous sensation as if made to play upon the fluorescent-lit blind aversions of bovine hall walkers, a landscape, a spirit generator, at war with our presumptions of self and otherness, the elemental process of the hot brutality of expansion, volcanically inserting itself red-hot into our minds, just like it did going solid in the changing sea eons ago. Before our eyes, Bill had gone feral at Rancho El Eden. His skin was dark brown, his curly hair bleached wild in the wind and sun. Disdaining all manual labor like a pothead Confucian, he'd let his fingernails grow long, and they'd become stained with marijuana and tobacco tars, and he'd burnt 2 deep divots in his index finger and thumbnails from using them as a roach clip. In admiration, I began to do the same. Like a wild animal with a secret lair, Bill didn't tell me where he slept at the mouth of heaven, any more than he did in the Mother Mountains. He came the 3rd morning or so, like he had at Rancho El Eden, rattling the tent flaps at dawn. Fayaway rolled over with an annoyed moan. I asked Bill if he'd already gotten high. He narrowed his eyes and said with an inscrutable smile, "I'm stoned, therefore I am." As the sun rose, we went through the tall grass to a certain spot Bill had found. Where the crumbling brown volcanic tuff was at an incline, we could clamber down to a slightly harder edge that dropped off straight down to the crashing surf. We each found footholds to keep us from tumbling onto the rocks, sheathing and unsheathing themselves out of the frothing surf 100 feet down. Bill took out joints he'd already rolled, and we smoked silently, looking out over the vast sea and the colorscape of orange, blue, and starless sky going azure with the slowly climbing sun. Bill was staring at the picture of the Venus de Milo on the box of Classico matches and said, "The bass player said the other night he is going to form a band and go on tour." We took cactus acid and went to the whorehouse down the road, and you know what that asshole did? He got drunk and went hair in the face crazy dancing with the girls. I had to leave that sweating fool, but he stumbled along behind me soon enough and told me he'd taken a shit in the doorway on his way out and stuck his passport in it open to his picture. I went down the next morning with him, and when this fat lady came out, still dressed like she was the night before. She'd already washed the passport and handed it to him, laughing. There was another laugh, like a witch, and I look in the shadows, and there's this toothless old lady, gray as a ghost. The point is, even that shitbox has his dream. He's got his band. I know Fayaway is going back to Africa to do something good after she finishes college. Your cabin in Alaska is no dream. It's an escape hatch. You're just treading water. What I got is more an angle than a dream. My uncle said if I agreed to work for him for 2 more years, he'd help me rebuild the old red Kenworth he has out back to start my own trucking business. But I don't want to drive truck for 2 years, much less the rest of my life. Still, if I could just get it, we could mount a travel trailer on that. I know of an old Airstream in a junkyard. Bolting that on would make the ultimate camper. I met this chemist guy at Woodstock who said he'd sell me enough liquid LSD to make 1 million good hits for $500. I bet you could come up with that. I was called to LSD at a truck stop. I was talking to a guy in a painted-up VW van trying to buy pot, and he told me he was going to Woodstock. I'd never even heard of Woodstock, but it sounded pretty good, so I abandoned my driver and got in that van that had all this bullshit painted on it. We had to walk in a long ways. When we got there, that guy danced off when he saw a naked girl, and I wandered off into the friendliest crowd you ever saw, almost all on acid. I'd only read about LSD in magazines. Nobody had it in Charlotte that I knew of. But just like they say at church, the scales fell from my eyes, and my eyes were opened. He pointed at the bright horizon, beginning to shimmer 100 miles out. Everything people think they are is trickery and phony. There is no right and wrong, no mistakes. I mean, LSD stripped it all down for me. It's all play acting, so why not make it what you want? When the bus goes, we should stay on. There's an army of farm kids who want out of their little towns. We can travel between Appalachia and the Rockies and show them a way to leave. Not just their town, but their planet. We can take the old Kenworth to concerts, rodeos, county fairs, cattle auctions, tent revivals, wherever those kids are. We could take acid with them and tell them the good new news. Tell them to forget that old good news. That was a con job. Most people are paying $3 or $4 a hit now. Say we sell it for $2. That's $2 million just on the first 500 invested. And we can go back to the chemist and get as much as we want. Once we pay off the Kenworth, the travel trailer, and your 500, we'd split it all 50-50. It would just be like a long Woodstock party, and then at 22 or 5, we could retire. I might get a tobacco, cattle, and horse farm, and you could move to Alaska in style if you still wanted it. I think I nodded okay and went down to ride the waves.